Recording on. Thank you for that's fantastic. Okay, and then we'll just end with the home practice, and so we'll finish it as usual. So, so to begin, finding a nice, comfortable position for meditation, where you can be relaxed and yet alert. Just checking in with the body, allowing the body to soften. Checking in with the emotional state, allowing whatever's there to be there. And with the mental state. And then just checking in on the awareness itself, perhaps asking who notices all this. Just allowing the experience to flow. And we'll start with one sound of the bell. Bringing the attention to the body breathing. Opening to whatever's there. Allowing the body to relax with each out breath, to whatever extent it wants to relax. Letting it soften and just really feeling this body of yours. Bringing warmth and kindness to it. And curiosity, noticing sensations both strong and subtle. Following each breath all the way through. Being aware of the start of the in-breath, through the length of the in-breath and the end of the in-breath. And then any space, and then the start of the out-breath. And all the way through. And the end of the out-breath. And any space. Before the next wave begins, the in-breath. Just riding this wave of the breath that may be smooth or choppy, deep or shallow, doesn't matter. Whenever you notice the mind wanting to take control of the breath, doing your best to release that. Noticing any resistance in your experience. Whenever you notice resistance, just allowing the body to relax, soften. And opening up mentally to the experience. Wanting to have the experience, even if it's unpleasant. Wanting to let it in all the way. Leaning back into the seat of awareness, perhaps asking who notices or what is having this experience, or whatever phrase works for you. And up to you if you want to be aware of the whole body breathing, or if you want to focus in on a particular place. Could be where it's most prominent, or perhaps the belly, around the nostrils. Around the belly tends to be a little more soothing. Around the nostrils, a little more energizing. Totally up to you. Allowing the body to soften with each out breath. Not forcing anything. It doesn't really matter whether it does or not. Doing your best to stay in the seat of awareness. And whenever the attention wanders, and you notice, celebrate the noticing. And gently bring the attention back to the breath, wherever your focus was. Good. Now continuing to be a little bit aware of the breath, using it as an anchor, but shifting the attention to mental talk and mental images. So first of all, just focusing on mental talk space, perhaps saying a few words in your mind, just to be clear on where mental talk space is. And just watching mental talk space. So what's there may be very clear or it may be very subtle. There may be nothing at all. Quite often I notice there's just this subtle kind of undercurrent of quasi-talk. Good, and now focusing on mental image space. So imagine the face of someone you like. Just notice where in space that appears. And now just imagine in the room where you're in. Just become aware of that in mental image space. It's kind of like there's a screen, usually somewhere around the eyes. Could be in front or behind. And then there's kind of 360 screen when you imagine the room. Kind of surround vision. At least that's my experience. Your experience might be different. And whatever your experience is just fine. It doesn't really matter. The content doesn't matter. What matters is just being aware of whatever's there and opening to it, not resisting it. Or if there is resistance, just being aware of the resistance. And now opening up both mental talk and mental images. If you like continuing, have some awareness of the breath as an anchor. Watching all of our thoughts from the bank of the river, the seat of awareness, same thing. And if the thoughts or something else takes our attention away, when we notice that, then we can celebrate, it's no problem. And we come back to watching the thoughts from the seat of awareness. And now allowing our awareness to expand to our whole sensory experience. To our body, our breath, our thoughts, and also our emotions and sound, and perhaps even taste and smell. And asking who notices. Being aware that you are the one watching. You're the one experiencing all of this. The thoughts, the emotions, they're no different than the bodily sensations, the sounds, the smells. They're all objects of consciousness. Now allowing this practice to come to an end with the sound of the bell. Great. So if you've got your video off, it would be great if you could turn it on, because I want to try and keep this as interactive as possible. And I was actually on a Zoom call yesterday with various mindfulness teachers. It was a presentation around Zoom, teaching mindfulness on Zoom, and you know, one of the questions was about, you know, having the video camera on, and someone made the comment, you know, to have your video camera off, it's like if you're in person and you turned your chair around and had your back to everyone. So, but that said, if you need to turn your camera off, if you know, you know, if your partner walks in the room naked, or you know, whatever, you know, if you feel you need to turn the camera off for whatever reason, feel free to do that, right? But you know, we want to try and feel as connected as possible to each other, and certainly it helps me to be able to see how you're doing. So we're going to take up the homework, and feel free to either raise your hand, or just you can put something in the chat if you like, or just go ahead and say something. You know, feel free to do whatever, to chime in however you wish to chime in. So. So I'm just pulling up the homework here. And so we had the meditations. So the meditations were on emotions. And did anyone want to share about that, or have any questions or suggestions for future recordings or anything like that? Anything at all?
Hi.
Lori, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, I just have a comment about there's this part in the guided meditation this week that I really enjoyed, which was when you said, you know, if you're experiencing turmoil, like that's okay. You can allow yourself to experience that. For some reason, like every time I played the meditation, like that line just gets to me, where like I find more rest in my body. So just wanted to say I really enjoyed that. things.
Thanks, Kim. Good feedback. And sorry, someone else, I didn't catch who else was going to share there. Or was someone else going to share there?
I think it was Janet.
I
think it was Janet, but maybe it's frozen.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, it looks frozen on Janet's end.
Yeah,
I can hear you. Yeah, it's just the video is frozen.
I think, yeah, Janet, you might be having internet issues. If you are having internet issues, that's actually, you could always.
I got a message that my internet's unstable.
Okay. I guess I guess she'll come back. Okay. Anyone else want to share about the meditation?
Larry, just quickly, I'll share, and I did last week as well in class, but I really like the practice of looking for joy or looking for fear, like looking for the emotions is really helpful actually, because you can identify them like really quickly then.
Great, thanks, Philippa. And Janet, are you, I see your microphone.
Okay.
There you go.
Try again. Sometimes I felt like you said, now feel like one emotion and then move on and then feel another emotion and like sadness or something. And it felt like I was going from a good place to a bad place. So I was just wondering if you could give me a little clarification on how to handle. It's like, I don't want to go to sadness because I'm not feeling any sadness. And suddenly I feel like I'm turning to a place that I wasn't at.
So, so there was, it sounds like mentally there was resistance. There were some thoughts that said, I don't want to go there. And then what did you actually notice that sadness was there, or,
Okay.
or like, I'm just wondering what your experience was.
Yeah, like I dug in down. Oh, sorry, you were a little bit choppy now. So I would find some sadness, and then because it was different each time, but I would find the sadness and think, but I was just feeling joy, and now I'm feeling sadness, and I didn't want to feel the sadness.
Right, right. And the intention was actually, it wasn't to create any particular emotion. It was just to kind of look around your experience, you know, look around your body, and see, is there any of this? Is there any of that? Is there any of this? You know, so it would be sort of like, you know, the equivalent in the body scan would be notice anywhere where there's heat, or notice anywhere where there's cold, notice anywhere where there's itchiness, notice anywhere where there's tension. So in the emotions, you know, that, you know, it's like notice anywhere where there's joy, notice anywhere where there's sadness, notice anywhere where there's fear. So it's the same sort of kind of scanning the horizon for this or that or the other, but not trying to make anything happen. You know, it's just
Okay.
that emotions are often subtle and we're not aware of them. And so what I find is by looking for a particular emotion, maybe it's there, maybe it's not, right? But I can detect a subtle emotion better when I'm, you know, kind of targeting it in terms of my awareness. Does that make sense? So
Okay, that
yeah.
makes sense. I'm not, if it's not there, it's not there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, but it's so, yeah, you know, and I understand why you would, you know, have that, you know, have that resistance, thinking that I'm asking you to manufacture an emotion. So I apologize for that. That was not the intention. Yeah. Because
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. And how about the letting go of the small stuff? you know, choosing something small that you can, you know, that may come up, and then practicing to let that go using relax, release, lean back. How did that go for people? And is there, I'm just wondering if people are clear on, oh, my connection is unstable. Okay. So Kim says, so many small stuff for me to let go. Yay.
Lori, I noticed that this week has been a harder week for myself for a number of reasons. And I noticed that small stuff was harder to let go as well. So if it was something I was noticing before, which was I had a capacity to sort of go, okay, try to pass through you, don't let it bother you. That obviously the more I was dealing with larger or more agitated, more full, noticing more fear or noticing other emotions, those were like, you know, death by 1,000 needles or death by 1,000 stings. So that's what really sort of helped me. And obviously chapter 10 was a big one for me today as well, with all that chatter. So that's something that I noticed that came up. So I gave myself a pat on the back saying, hey, yeah, so you notice it's harder. That's simple.
Yeah. Yeah, good. It sounds like we got some really good noticing there. And you know, I had some, you know, some consultations with people this week, and one of the things that came up was that, you know, some of the things that you think that folks think of as small stuff is really not small stuff. So, because small stuff really is, you know, stuff that generally gets triggered from the outside. And if you don't do anything about it, there's no problem, because the only problem is the inner problem. So, you know, something like, you know, a noise, you know, your neighbor's making noise or something like that, where you can't do anything about it. And the only problem is like your own frustration or whatever, or irritation or whatever it brings up in you. Or, you know, the classic, like the weather or a car that's, you know, going slowly and in your way, or a lineup or something like that. But you know, things like negative self-talk. Negative self-talk's not small stuff, right? That tends to be deep stuff, right? So that's harder. That's definitely harder. And like Shuyan gave his experience last week of, you know, getting a package that was damaged, and you know, again, that's not necessarily small stuff, because you actually have to do something about the, you know, you got this damaged package, right? So it's more than just, you know, something that somebody's doing that's bothering you for whatever reason. Yeah. So I just give that, you know, because it's hard to learn to let go initially, and so you really want to work with stuff that doesn't trigger, like that's not too difficult. And as Kevin, as you said, like, you know, having many things come at you at once, they do tend to, you know, add up, and it's harder to deal with a bunch of stuff at once. So, yeah. So I'm just looking.
Hi, Xuan here.
Hey, Xuan.
So I'm just sharing my experience of dealing with, I think it would be a smaller stuff than a damaged package. I guess by your definition, I mean, it's not something that I need to do something about. I mean, the impact is all internal. Well, I mean, the nature of the incident is really minor, but I assure you, it's minor. But it is quite uncomfortable. I mean, it's familiar. I mean, the reactions is fairly familiar. It's a mix of regret, a bit of a remorse, I mean, and a little bit of anger, but it's all very mild, but it's recognizable, it's familiar, it's triggered by similar events. And yeah, I mean, this would be a good way, a good occasion to practice witnessing, to watch myself from the seat of consciousness and not identifying myself with that discomfort, both the discomfort of the heart, or sort of, I mean, the discomfort in my head, in my mind. But now this is the part that I want to share. It's the, as I had a strange thought. The thought would be that, hey, wait a minute. It may be actually too easy to do this right, to go to the seat of consciousness and watch myself. And that this is just like watching a movie. This will pass. I am not that. I am the seat of consciousness. I could almost imagine myself do that easily and wondering whether in fact there is a point that I should allow myself to wallow in that a bit, that there is a point that I need to go through that discomfort. And by rushing to the solution, to go back to the seat of consciousness, would that be just an instance of running away from the problem? So it's a bit of
Well,
paradox there.
as I'm listening to you, I'm wondering, so, you know, you say it's easy. So yeah, I was, you know, it is easy after you practice a while, and when it's small stuff and you're very, you know, you recognize it,
Yeah.
on, it is easy. But easy doesn't mean that there's no discomfort, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm wondering if, it sounds like what you're describing as easy means it wasn't painful. There wasn't a lot of.
Well, easy in the sense that I could, the discomfort is real, but easy in the sense that I could deal with the discomfort by following the teaching in the book. But at the same time, wondering, I mean, it's just a thought, it's kind of dawning on me that, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should allow myself not to be in the seat of consciousness, allow myself to be totally messed up so that I could wallow in the bin. And there is a pond in participating in that suffering, in that sorrow, and not trying to be above that.
I think that's your samskaras talking. I think that's the voice in your head.
Okay. Maybe samskara is right.
The mind is tricky. It is really tricky, right? You're playing chess with yourself, right?
Yeah.
Part of you that doesn't want to let go. It doesn't want to leave the purity of what is known, what is habitual. But whenever the question is it better to leave the seat of consciousness? The answer is always no. That one's very straightforward. No matter what is happening, it's better to be in the seat of consciousness than to be, immersed in the disturbance and lose that awareness.
Okay. that's sure.
It's great that it's easy.
There you go.
All stuff that we could work with easily. That you could, really stay in that seat of consciousness, because one of the big things we're practicing is just what it's like to be in the seat of consciousness. How do I shift into the seat of consciousness? What is that experience like? Let me get used to it. The more you experience it, the easier it is to get into, the easier it is to stay there. For some period of time. You're not going to stay there all day long by any stretch. but for some period of time. And so, and that's why we want, there's nothing too small, right? We want to practice, we want to get good at and make it a recognizable, familiar place, right? The seat of awareness. Also, get used to allowing the disturbance to release, allowing yourself to experience the disturbance without resistance. So, the fact that you can easily be in the seat of awareness and watch the disturbance do its thing without resistance is great. It's great. Yeah. Okay. Is that okay for you? Okay. I'm just going back to the chat and so Kim was saying, noticing many small things to let go helped to see how many preferences I had, also helped see certain preferences that were much stronger than many small things, like wanting to be right and for others not to think I'm dumb. Great. And Tanya, oh, sound. Good sound now, good. Good sound now, yeah, okay. I reset my router now just before this thing. I always do that. I'm trying my best to get good internet. Okay, how about other folks? What was your experience like with letting go?
Sorry. Yeah, sure. So like Kevin, it's been kind of big stuff coming up this week and for the last couple of weeks, and tiredness as well. Just noticed that it is so much harder when I'm tired. So this week pretty much it's, I'm napping after work and etc. So when I can, that little list that we did with the small stuff, that's good because I definitely noticed some things right away. But the bigger stuff are just there. It's kind of omnipresent and it sucks it away. So it's kind of harder to be in the seat of consciousness then. And the tiredness, I just feel like even last night I got into bed and I was like trying to check in with myself and I couldn't identify any emotion, nothing, just a physical tiredness. And that's it.
Yeah. And if the tiredness is really strong and you can't really focus on anything else, then focus on the tiredness. Just allow yourself to be tired. Let go of any resistance to the tiredness and just experience the tiredness, right? So sometimes when there's a really strong, distraction, then if you really can't do anything about it, then just go with it. Yeah.
Lori, Kevin here. If you're sitting with a strong emotion, whether it be tiredness, fear, agitation, or how long do you lean into it then? Like, as long as it takes? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean,
is there practice to say, okay, is there questions that you're going to keep on asking yourself? Maybe it's like, okay, go deeper. Like, is there some kind of, are we going to get like sort of, because I've been noticing something coming up and I haven't got to, I just been noticing it and I haven't been able to really get to, not that I'm trying to solve it, but just sit with it for a while and to let it pass, and it's not passing. So I'm like, okay, we'll sit longer. And is there a point where you should say, okay, let's just do a sanity break here or step back? Let's, because I know we talked about this, my idea of sitting with something or being the observer and being aware of awareness was more a strategy rather than an actual doing the practice. And so is there a point though when you should step out and say, okay, no, I'm going to be strategic here. I realize that's too heavy of a burden right now. I can't, or I don't have the capacity right now, step out to step back in.
Yeah. I don't think there's any right or wrong. I think it's really up to you. You know, I find with myself, like sometimes it's just like, how much of this can I take? You know, um, you know, if it's a strong, because I've sat through strong stuff that just goes on and on for, you know, I've sat with it for like an hour, 2 hours. So, and like, you know, sometimes you do have to go about your day, right? It's like, okay, I, you know, um, uh, and you can in fact go about your day to a certain extent. Like what I find is, you know, if I'm sitting and then if I'm actually just like, you know, stopping what I'm doing and being with it, and then at some point I'm like, you know what, I gotta go do this stuff. So I try to maintain my seat of awareness, just allow this to continue as I'm doing whatever. And sometimes that happens, and sometimes I just get distracted, right? I go off to, you know, I've got to write an email or do whatever, and then it just sort of, you know, I lose track of it. It kind of goes away, although maybe it's still there, you know, in terms of attention or something. And that's okay. That's okay. You know, the main thing that Mickey talks about in the book is more like, you know, when you know, not taking the action. Like, you know, he talked this week about not, you know, if you want to stop smoking, not putting the cigarette in your mouth, right? And so you definitely don't want to let the stuff take you to that sort of, you know, to the point of doing something that you don't want to do, like that in your clear state you don't want to do, right? But in your disturbed state you might do. So you definitely want to try not to do that. But if it's just a matter of like there's stuff coming up and I'm just being with it, I mean, you know, you can't be expected to sit there forever. So don't feel the need to do that. Yeah, and any, you know, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about giving our difficulties a bath, right? And to the extent that you sit with it, to the extent that you allow it to just do its thing, watching it from the seat of awareness, even if it doesn't go away at all, even if it maybe gets stronger, you have released some of it. Like, just be clear on that. To the extent that you're allowing it to move freely without resistance, watching it from the seat of awareness, it is releasing. And that is purification. And however long you allow that to go, because I'm very clear that there's stuff in me that I'm going to have to sit with for, you know, I don't know, 1,000 hours. Like I have no idea when it's going to release. You know, I've sat with it so many times. So yeah, it's not, you know, if you're working with something that's really deep, and you never really know, you never really know when it's going to actually like be completely released. So given that you never know, you know, you just sit with it for as long as you care to sit with it. You know, the main thing is not to get sucked into it, which tends to happen more when stuff goes on. I find stuff goes on in my life. If I'm in sitting meditation and stuff comes up, like I don't tend to get lost in it too easily. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we should move on. So there were a couple other things. There was the movie or music thing. There was watching the heart opening or closing and asking if this is worth closing. And then there was also paying attention to when you feel love and enthusiasm and asking why you can't feel that way all the time. So anybody want to share anything about any of those practices?
Watching the video, the emotion was sadness, and my experience was that thoughts did not come up to try to make things better, or I can't remember how you phrased it, but I didn't have to deal with any thoughts that came up to oppose it or whatever it was. It was just, I was able to, I repeated the letting my heart sing its truth or whatever it was. And I experienced it fully. That was my experience.
So, and was that different from how you would ordinarily watch a movie?
It was actually the funeral video for my father. And it wasn't different. No, not at all.
Mhm. Okay. Thanks, Brian. Anyone practice with the heart open close thing? Need some nods.
Hi, Andre here.
Hey, Andre.
I did practice with it, and what I've been finding is it's kind of like I'll practice and I'll feel open, and it's like, oh, and right away it's just, I don't even think about it, but it's like immediately there's like a tightening, you know, and it just goes back. And so it's kind of interesting how, I guess the practice maybe is to like, to try to stay open, not like keep the, it's almost like a contraction, you know, the closing. So, and yeah, that's what I've been experiencing. And it seems like if I can kind of stay open, it's like there's more kind of like energy that seems to, I don't know if it builds up or it just, you know, that I wouldn't have noticed before.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Did you find that one of the you know, we I mean, we can't, we, you know, we don't even want to try to force our heart to open, but you know, that, like this question, you know, is it worth closing, right? Because so often when our heart closes, we actually think to ourselves, you know, not necessarily I want my heart to be closed, but you know, I have every right to be angry, or you know, whatever the statement is to affirm the closing, right? And it's and the main practice here is just turning that mental attitude around to, you know, I don't want to be unhappy. I want to be happy. I don't want to be closed. It's not, you know, nothing's worth closing. So I'm wondering if like if there was any of that in your practice.
Yeah, I noticed that I felt like the opposite of closing felt kind of vulnerable. You know, it felt kind of like, that's the only word that comes to mind. And that's not a bad thing. It's just kind of like, I guess that's how it feels to me. So yeah, but I mean, you know, it's good practice. I'm at home, I'm, you know, meditating or whatever. And so it's been interesting that way.
And our heart open is vulnerable, right? Heart closed is protecting and protecting, right? So heart open is, you know, it is being vulnerable, right? And if we stop defending, then we feel more vulnerable. I mean, that's the tendency, right? I'm not saying
Right.
that's always the case, but that's the tendency. And that's why we protect in many cases, because we're protecting against fear, we're protecting against getting hurt. You know, the problem is we cage ourselves, right? That's we build a you know, we build these steel bars to keep the dangerous things out, and then we look around and we're surrounded by steel bars. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Lori.
Hey.
And hi, evening, everyone. Yeah, for me, I think like Andre was saying, when you do open the floodgates to vulnerability, and you sort of want to shut down things quickly. So that's been a challenge, and I can often tend to do a lot of interesting intellectualizing in my head about my issues, and then I try to avoid certain situations. So with the practice, I've been really forcing myself to be aware and to, instead of running away from the things that I want to run away from, I've been just challenging myself more and putting myself in a certain situation that I want to run from, and knowing that it's probably going to be beneficial for me, even though it's going to be quite challenging.
Mhm.
So I think that's been the good thing about the practice. I tend to overthink things, and with his theories on smoking, that sort of stuff, coming from a therapeutic background myself, harm reduction and all these sorts of things, a process, I'm still finding it hard to, it seems too simple. And
Yeah.
sometimes simplicity is probably a good way instead of complicating it too much. But my training in counseling and that sort of stuff, I think, well, maybe this is just too easy. And then I start ruminating that it's a bunch of boulder dash.
Yeah.
But I do realize the benefits of it. It is really a simple process in its theories, but it's very difficult to implement. It's practically,
Yeah.
in practice, the practice of it is very, very complicated.
Yeah. Well, as you said,
in my mind.
Yeah, we all again, it's this chess game, and the mind is very tricky, and so it's complicated because you're playing chess against yourself.
Yeah.
One of the things in terms of the not smoking, people, I've heard this from other people, and I see it myself that people say, oh, I'm having a really tough time with this not smoking thing. The urges have been so strong. Oh my God, the urges have been so strong. And I struggle and I struggle and I struggle. The urges are so strong. And then Mickey will say, so did you smoke? No. I'll say, perfect. You practice perfectly, right? Because there's this idea that it shouldn't be a struggle. But that's not how it works, right? These urges come up and they're powerful. And staying in the seat of awareness allows us to be with the urge, experience the urge, which sucks to be with this urge, but to not reach for the cigarette or whatever else it is that you're trying to not do. That is success, right? That is success. Struggling, but not doing the thing you set out not to do is success. And over time, as you struggle, as you get more and more used to the urge, it loses its power. You start to recognize it more clearly. You get to know it better because it's coming up and you're being with it, you're watching it, and it loses its power. And then at some point, it's like, yeah, I don't smoke anymore. That's really the way to work with it, right? And and at the end of the day, if you do the thing that you set out not to do, it's not a big deal. It's all about learning to let go, right? I mean, sometimes it can be a big deal, obviously. I mean, an addict can start using again and their whole life goes, or whatever it may be. Some of these things have serious consequences. But at the end of the day, we're learning to let go. And the more we learn, the easier it gets. And then we actually start letting go at some point. And then we have fewer and fewer samskaras. And then we start to notice that the world is becoming a nicer place. Yeah. And if you have enough clarity in terms of your motivation, which, you see this over and over again in every chapter, this admonition to commit, to see that defending, it says my internet connection's unstable. Okay. Is to see that defending your samskaras is counterproductive. To clearly see that, and then you become the more confident you are in the explanation of the way our mind works and our energy works, the easier it is to do this practice. If you have enough, if you really think my happiness depends on this, my life depends on this, being the person I want to be depends on this, freedom depends on this. And if you really have that very strong, clear intention, and you see that no, my defending is the wrong thing to do in terms of where I want to go. If you're really clear on that, then it gets a lot easier. And then the only trick is just recognizing when a disturbance is happening, which is not a minor thing by any stretch. Yeah.
Maybe that's a good segue. Hi, everybody. I was going to say that I had the experience this week of not noticing my heart was closed or closing when it was, but sort of the next day or a couple hours later, thinking back to a previous experience and going, oh, that felt terrible. And of course my heart was closed. That's what was going on there. So I tried to use that, sort of apply that, well, celebrate that I noticed, even though it's the next day. And at least now I've got kind of the knowledge that when a situation similar to that one comes up again, I can tend to close. So maybe next time, since I planted that, I will, take a moment and not close, try not to close, because I'll be more aware. So that was good. So I close all the time, but you can also realize it all the time.
Yeah, thanks, Julia. Okay, so I think we should probably move on. Why don't we do a quick stretch? So I'm going to stand up and just try and be in your seat of awareness. Kind of watch what's going on as you're moving, and so do whatever your body wants to do, and try and do it in the seat of awareness. Try and just aware that you're the one experiencing this. Feel in your body. And we'll just have like a 2-minute break. But if you need to go to the washroom, that's a good time. So whenever you're ready to come back, that's great. And Kim, I see you say I found the practice of opening the heart most challenging when trying to implement the practice while continuing a conversation after my heart has closed. Yeah, that's tough. I don't know how to continue listening, being engaging in the conversation while trying to relax and release. So yeah, that's advanced. That's advanced, but it's definitely doable. But it's very hard to maintain that seat of awareness when I find it's difficult when I'm listening, and it's more difficult when I'm talking. I find listening is easier than talking. Listening I can do from the seat of awareness pretty well, but yeah, it's tough. It's just practice. It's just a matter of more practice. Okay, so just waiting on Janet and Brian, and Tanya's back. Oh. So I'm gonna get right into it, just because we are not going to get through this all tonight. So we'll just go ahead. Oh, and everyone's back. Great. Okay. So chapter 8, let go or fall. So I found this really interesting. Fear doesn't want to feel itself. It's afraid of itself. What does that mean to folks? Because it sounds weird to me. Fear doesn't want to feel itself. It's afraid of itself. Did anyone notice that and sort of say, what? Maybe not.
Yeah, hi Laurie.
Hi.
I did notice that, and he's good in the book. He explains it very quickly. You know, the next sentence he's going to explain what your question is. You know, so it's like it doesn't want to feel itself, and how it manifests for you is you notice the disturbance or the energy. It's more the activity from the fear. That's what I got from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds funny to hear that fear is a thing. I mean, when I thought about it, I think what he's trying to say is because what I notice is when I experience fear, I'm afraid, right? Like there's fear there, right? And I don't want to be afraid. And I just want the fear to stop. And so it's when he says fear is afraid of itself, it's like it just like it, you know, almost anything can come to your mind, and you're afraid of it because you're experiencing the fear, right? When you're in fear, things seem scary, right? But this idea of talking about fear as this kind of independent thing, it reminds me of like FDR saying, you know, there's nothing to fear but fear itself. You know, but it's this, I think the important thing is that conveying the sense that when we experience these emotions, it completely pervades our experience, right? Completely pervades our experience. And, you know, and we just want to protect ourselves from this fear. But we don't identify as protecting ourselves from the fear. We identify as protecting ourselves from all the things we're thinking about that are scaring us, right? We don't think I'm afraid of the fear. We think I'm afraid of all these things that are popping into my mind that are scary. And then we focus on, I don't want these things that are popping into my mind, I don't want them to happen, right? And then we start planning on how we're going to make sure they don't happen, right? And building these walls. And you know, as Mickey says, this act of protecting against fear makes us afraid of life, right? And then we resist life, and then we create samskaras. We fight with life, and we you know, and these samskaras are made of fear. And so, but then we actually defend our samskaras because we don't want to feel the fear that gets released when the samskara gets released. So then, you know, and it's just this circular thing where that tricks us into actually protecting the fear that we've got stored inside us, rather than experience it and releasing it, right? So, and then as he says, life becomes a threat. You know, we don't get up in the morning going, I wonder what's going to happen today. No, we get up in the morning going, I hope this doesn't happen. I hope that doesn't happen. I better do this to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, you know, and which is more fun? Which do you want to do, right? It's so clear to me. But even though it's clear to me, it doesn't mean I just pop into that, right? It really takes practice and reminding myself that you know, I really want to be open to whatever happens today. I really want to just practice letting life unfold. Can I do that? So, and then, you know, he talks about this idea of like turning. So what this leads to is completely turning around this idea that, you know, life poking our samskaras is actually a good thing, because that's how they release, right? And it's like, yeah, let life bring up my samskaras. I want to release them. The only way I can release them is if they get poked. So life, thank you for, you know, having this long line at the grocery store. Life, thank you for making the weather way hotter than I want it today. Thank you, life, for you know, having you know, what else is bothering me today? Thank you, life, for making me forget to send out a reminder until 6:20 tonight. You know, that poked me pretty good. You know, and just having this attitude is just you know, as opposed to, you know, oh no, this thing happened and that thing happened. I hate when my samskaras get poked, right? I hate when that happens. Instead, it's like, no, life is wonderful that it's poking my samskaras. You know, it's like that Zen story about, you know, there's the nasty person at the monastery who all the monks, you know, makes everybody angry, and no one likes this person. And then one day the person announced he's leaving, and the master says to the person, please don't leave, we can't practice as well without you, right? We need you here to poke us, right? So, you know, having that attitude of, I want to get poked, I want life to, you know, stimulate my samskaras so I can release them. And then when they come up and it feels crappy, it's like, yeah, purification, woo, right? And then we can okay, we've got a clap. Sorry, I thought that was already fan. Yeah, so, you know, isn't this great that they can come up? And it's, you know, it's really hard. Like, this is like, I don't, you know, it's hard to remember this throughout the day when these things come up, because of course they come up, and then they come up with the emotion, and they come up with the strength. And that's why we need to practice with the small stuff, and, you know, not expect that we're just going to read the chapter and then, yeah, I'm just going to celebrate my samskaras getting hit. Yeah, no problem. But that is, you know, that's the road we're on. You know, and I think it's a wonderful road, because it just completely turns around the experience of the day, right? Somebody says something nasty to you, and, you know, and then you feel it come up, and then you're like, oh, let me relax and release. And then you relax and release, and then it's like, oh, you know, thank you, that was wonderful. You know, it's like the massage therapist who's like grinding their thumb into your back, and the pain is terrible, and afterwards you're like, that was fantastic. You know, so this is the same kind of thing with your emotions. So yeah, and then whenever there's a release, that it's a transformation of energy, right? It goes from the energy of the samskara into the energy of the flow of joy and love and enthusiasm. So yeah, and the more you practice, like, the easier it gets, and the more you see the more subtle aspects of it, and the more the main thing is, you know, you're getting your mind, you're laying down tracks in your mind, in your brain, of you know, of noticing when samskaras come up, of knowing what to do when they come up, of being able to move into that seat of awareness easily, of being able to relax more easily. You know, I had this experience on the weekend. I was doing this meditation, this online meditation, and right near the beginning, I had the thought, oh, it's my cousin's anniversary today. I should give them a call. Oh, they're probably at their cottage, and they have no cell reception at their cottage. Gee, I wish I was at a cottage. I miss nature. I want to go down to the water, but there's too many people at the water. And, you know, and I was like aware, I'm sitting there going, yeah, you know, release, you know, just let the mental talk go. And it was just going and going, but it sort of had me. And then I sort of was aware of it, then it had me, and then I was sort of aware of it. But it was just this sense of lack and craving nature, craving. I wanted to go, I wanted to swim. I wanted to dive into the water. And there was no way I could do it. My brain was going and going about, how can I do this? I don't have a car. Maybe I should buy a car. What kind of car should I buy? And I'm watching it, right? I mean, I was in a fairly center place and I'm watching it. And it's just going and going and going and going. And, and this is the thing, when we release, the mind doesn't stop, right? The mind keeps going. The trick is to be able to just watch it and go like, boy, this mind, it's really, whew, look at that, So it's just very, but the emotion was there too, right? This real sense of lack, of need, of control. There was this contraction, like I need nature. I need it. And it's and it was like I was partially buying into it, and I was partially aware. It was like I was, but I wasn't aware enough exactly to make it really sitting in the seat of awareness. Sorry, Brian, you got your hand up.
Thanks. Can you describe what it felt like to go back and forth from the seat to feeling the emotion and then back to the seat again?
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, the consciousness, when I'm fully in the seat of awareness, then I'm just sort of watching it, and the emotion, the sense of lack or craving is, I'm just watching it, and it's not really bothering me. And, I'm just sort of, there's some amusement there, some joy, some, isn't this interesting kind of thoughts that go with it. And then if I get sucked into it and pulled out of my seat of awareness, then it's like, then I buy into what my mind is saying, right? And I find myself actually, trying to fix the problem, being really concerned about it, being really bothered by it. And then again, I'll notice, oh, boy, I'm really getting bothered by this. And then back into the seat of awareness. And then it's like, okay. So it's sort of, it's like I'm going back and forth between what is, not like, it's a difference between pain and suffering, kind of, like when I'm in my seat of awareness, I'm experiencing discomfort in my body, but it's fine. But when I go out of the seat of awareness, then it's like, it's not fine. It's not fine.
Okay, fine versus not fine.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is just to practice with it yourself, right? Because you're not going to be able, I mean, as much as I'd like to be able, your experience is not going to be the same as my experience. And my experience is not going to be the same from one thing to another, right?
When you say fine versus not fine, I haven't been able to bounce back and forth, but if I'm in the river, I'm not fine. And as soon as I get on the bank of the river, I do feel fine. So that fine versus not fine, I experience that exactly the same way.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Bev, yeah.
One thing that happened for me that I think is related, but I had a kind of a different experience when I was reading chapter 10 about how whatever our mind is thinking of, that's sort of the problem of the day. So I thought, okay, So I scanned and I saw, okay, I'm thinking a lot about resolving this will that I'm working on. And as I detached and watched the thoughts, what my experience was not, oh, it's fine. It was, I was able to see a certain emotional energy, like an energy block underneath. And what I saw was driving it was just, it's going to be right and it's going to be this. And as I started to untangle that knot, I ran into other emotional blocks that were related to that. And I could see that that is also the energy that's driving me around, okay, I got to get this food thing right, or I got to get this right. So what happened for me when I stepped back was it sort of unmasked the underlying driving, which was sort of like, that's the internal problem. It's not, if I can resolve the internal problem, then I'll be more, I don't know, what would you say, gracious in resolving all of the various issues that I've been working on this week. And I've had a lot of really amazing experiences with all of the homework, but that was my experience with stepping back.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks, Bev. Oh, Kim, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to contribute my experience with fine and not fine. I had an interesting interaction where, you know, I felt my heart close, and then I was like, okay, this is the moment to practice. So it's like, okay, trying to relax, you know, who's the one noticing this? That line's really powerful. I return to that line over and over again. And when I'm able to implement and to, you know, sit in that awareness, I find it's not that I don't feel the discomfort anymore, but there isn't that intensity. And then I'm like, okay, great, intensity's gone, continue doing what I'm doing. And then I'm like back in it, and it feels so intense again, and then like stepping back and then practicing again. And then it's like, okay, that intensity subsides. So maybe, you know, rolling this into a question, does that mean like I need to sit with this to like really allow my heart to release, and for all of that to like process, or like is it possible to just like kind of go in and out, and then eventually, little by little, it'll just purify?
Well, I think it's important to, like, this practice is really like dealing with things when they come up, as opposed to going, you know, drilling for them. So, you know, we don't need to ever go drilling for them. You know, and when they come up, you know, if it's you know, if it's really intense, I mean, you can try, there's a couple of different things you can try. One is just like, it sounds like there's some resistance to intensity, right? Which, I mean, makes sense. You know, we don't want the really intense negative experiences, but can you find a way, like, can you notice, and this is just a question, I don't actually know the answer. When the intensity comes up, is there a resistance to the intensity, or is it just plain overwhelming, right? Is there a way to, like, is there a mental idea, I don't want intensity?
Yeah, there's definitely this not wanting to experience this intensity, and that's usually what reminds me of practice. It's like, oh, I don't want to feel this. Now let's practice so that I can take the edge off.
Yeah. Yeah. So can you turn that around and say, I don't want this intensity, so bring it on? Because I don't want is resistance.
Mm-hmm.
What we want to do is release our resistance, right? Let go of our resistance so that we can allow the blockage to come up, right?
All right, I'll try that next time.
Yeah, you never have to go drilling for it. You never have to feel like, oh, this thing sort of came up and I didn't let it come all the way up, so now I got to go looking for it. You don't have to do that.
All right, next time, bring on the intensity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you know, Mickey makes a strong point of saying, like, let go right away, don't wait, you'll get pulled into it and you'll get lost. So I'm just gonna mention that quickly. So need to move on to removing our inner thorn. And, you know, I've talked about this before, and, you know, you've read or you will read the chapter on removing your thorn. I just want to do quickly an exercise, very brief exercise, about, you know, just the importance of getting this, you know, this idea that when we you know, that we have two choices. We can, you know, pull the thorn out, which is going to hurt, and then it's gone. You've dealt with the root of the problem. Or we can just say, no, 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 don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it, and then just leave the thorn in, right? And that's what we're doing when we're avoiding, you know, the fear or the disturbance, the despair, whatever it might be, the loneliness. So, and then it's just there. And then you're, you know, even though you might be very successful in making sure it doesn't get touched, it's still running your life, right? You're always having to think about it. So just to kind of push that, you know, get clear on that, I just want you to sort of move into the seat of consciousness and just really notice this picture. So, you know, just to help, when Mickey's talking about a thorn, I got different pictures of thorns and a lot of them look pretty innocuous. This one, I think, makes very clear the depth of the problem, right? This is an ugly thing. And it's clear that it's going to hurt when you pull it out. But it's also clear you don't want to go through life with this thing on, right? Even though it's going to hurt, I want it off. I want it out of me, right? So when you're thinking of this thorn metaphor, like, this is what we're talking about, you know? It's not like, oh, it's just going to be this little bing, and then, of course, I'm going to pull it out. No, this is going to be challenging to pull it out, right? I mean, depending on how big and small and powerful and whatever it is, but, you know, this is what we're talking about. Not so easy. I'm just really noticing that. So yeah, so you want to deal with the underlying problem. You don't want to just, you know, defend, you know, marry someone just because you don't want to feel lonely, even though you don't really like them. You know, not a good solution, you know, or never go anywhere where couples go, or whatever, you know. It's just, it's not a good way to go. And it's really learning to it's okay to feel the inner disturbances, you know. It's okay to feel the pain, because in the long run you'll be so much better off. So chapter 10, stealing freedom from your soul, for your soul. As I mentioned earlier, before we really started, it's, you know, this is a fantastic chapter. I love this chapter. And I love this idea that when your body is healthy, you don't think about it. There's no pain, so you're not thinking about it. And yet our mind, we're constantly defending our psychological well-being. We're constantly thinking about it. This voice in our head is going. And we really, you know, society tells us there's mental health and there's mental illness. And so people walk around going, yeah, I don't have mental illness. I'm mentally healthy. But we're pretty screwed up. You know, we don't feel okay. We don't feel a sense of wholeness and completeness. And there's actually this subtle sense of lack. You know, the Buddha talked about this. You know, one of the 3 marks of existence is this unsatisfactoriness of experience. And that's what Mickey's talking about. And so he talks about the pain of having to think about yourself all the time, right? The pain of having to think about yourself all the time. So we're going to do a breakout now, and just, you know, talking about like, do you really think about yourself all the time? Like, you know, in terms of like how to be okay, how not to feel scared, how to feel loved, and how to feel happy. Like, do you think about this stuff a lot? You know, do you often feel worry or anxiety, or you know, how often do you feel happy and content? So just like how accurate, like what's your experience of this idea that there's this subtle sense of lack, that there's this, or maybe not so subtle, and that you're thinking about yourself all the time, thinking about your mental health, your psychological well-being all the time. So we'll go into breakout groups for about 5 minutes, and so you can share about this, see if this rings true for you. So how many of us are there? There's 14. So yeah, we'll just do it in groups of 2. We have an even number, so here we go. So Brian, are you able to join the room? There you go.
From my own lens.
Hey, I hope
Sorry.
you're popping in. Sorry, don't
What
let me.
was that? Sorry.
Don't let me.
Okay, I got a mute feedback loop there, so I wasn't sure what you had said. So yeah, I was just talking, and I would say, yeah, I think I'm getting a little bit better at trying not to think about everything through my own lens and what should be or what I wish would be. But yeah, I would definitely say for the most part, I still do. It's still, I think it's probably most people's go-to, you know, like you see things from your own viewpoint and almost always from a sense of lacking as opposed to recognizing what you have, like always wishing that something were different or better or wasn't at all or or was. So I would say generally, yeah, I feel that's the way I think. What about you?
I'd probably agree. Like, I find that, yeah, it's very me-centric about the things that I think of. And there are rare moments where I'm not, and that's where I'm not like worrying about the past or anticipating the future. If I'm really in the moment, and maybe it's more about things that I'm enjoying doing. Whereas if I'm not in a good state, I guess then that's my tendency to, you know, worry and all of that. So it's funny because Lori, like, I had been having the exact same thoughts, like, oh, it'd be awesome if I had a cottage and maybe I could work from the cottage. I should buy a car so I can get to this cottage. And I'm like literally looking up like real estate to buy a cottage. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then I take a step back and just like watch my mind do all of these things. And I'm like, I'm only doing it because I'm bored and I'm just feel stuck like where I am, but I have everything I need here. So it was just funny that you had the same thoughts. But yeah, like I find like the more, I don't know, that I've been doing the meditation practice, the more I'm able to catch when I'm like very me focused, and, you know, recognize that and be in that seat of awareness. But definitely I get sucked in at times where it's just all like me, and worry and anxiety and all of that. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not about actually stopping the mental talk. It's just about being able to watch it from the seat of awareness. Because you know, the only way to stop the mental talk is to release the samskaras.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long process. You can't just will it to stop. You know, all you can just be able to watch it from the seat of awareness, and, you know, hopefully be able to, you know, not identify with it and perhaps even laugh at it and go, huh?
I was gonna say laugh at yourself. That's what I find every time I'm aware of what I'm talking about. I'm like, oh, this is so stupid. And you just have to laugh. Like if people thought about me as much as I think they must think about me, they would have no time left, you know? Like, people aren't doing things because of me or despite me. So yeah, I find when I do gain that awareness, it's just funny. It's just quite amusing.
Yeah. I'm just going to bring us back because it'll be a minute until we, but yeah, I'm just really, anyway, continue. I'm going to return to the main session, but please continue.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Back.
Pop. We're all coming back. So does anyone want to share about that? What did folks, what was that like?
I'll go. Julian and I talked a little bit about how anxiety, it can be hard to talk about anxiety and fear because of judgment and the way other people will perceive you. And so that sometimes it's hard to open up about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you find Mickey's statement is correct in terms of the pain of having to think about yourself all the time?
Yes.
Yeah, Tanya?
Yeah, like it was validating to read it again in the book, and then I was with Evan, and then hearing you, Janet, like it's validating to hear that, okay, other people are living in their heads so much. It's not just me, because sometimes that feeling of neurosis is quite large, then that sends you off spinning again. And sometimes it's this I know better. I have a meditation practice. I'm aware of myself doing this right now and spinning it out, and then that adds another layer of the judgment. But yeah, even just posing this question and having a chance to like acknowledge it, and I still remember that sigh of like, oh, yeah, reading that in Mickey's book going, okay, yeah. So, because sometimes it feels so consuming and you think, am I the only one that is constantly like, yeah, being hyper focused on what I'm doing when it's ridiculous?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Tanya. Yeah. So I think you might have frozen there. I think you're having internet problems, but thank you. That was good. Okay, so did anyone find that, no, I don't think about myself all the time. I feel whole and complete most of the time. Anyone? Bev.
I'm delusional.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. We've only got 20 minutes left, and we got, oh, where are we now? Yeah. So I just wanted to quickly say, just a sort of a break from the book. I'm pulling stuff from Mickey's video course, which is that the mind has 3 layers. So the first layer is just our primal experience. So this is just, taking in all the senses and rendering that in our mind, and including in our emotions and our thoughts. And so it's just this kind of direct experience, right? This very just sensory experience that we have. So, you can call it direct experience. In Buddhism, sometimes it's called suchness, or, the thing as it is, the thing in itself. And so it's this very direct experience of things. And then on the second layer is the stuff we store. So this is our personal mind. This is all our, past impressions, all the samskaras, all the, I like this, I don't like that. All the filters that we put on life, right? That kind of distort the way we perceive things. And that, it's like the ego, or in Buddhism, manas, the part that, well, you know what ego is. Like, it's the part that we we see everything as it pertains to me, right? And it's generally the scared part, the part that doesn't feel okay. And then there's the analytical mind. So the analytical mind is intentional thinking, right? And it's, it's like, it's wonderful to have this analytical mind, right? Look at all that we've done as humans. It's, we can do amazing things with our mind. Of course, the things that we've tended to actually do with our mind is we ask our minds, we say, oh, I've got this great analytical mind. Let me figure out how I can control everything so that I can get what I want and avoid what I don't want, right? And of course, we're deluding ourselves with that. I mean, like COVID, I think, has shown us, we thought we could control, our environment, and, we don't really have control. And obviously we can't control other people. We can't control the economy. We can't control, our where we work. We can't, there's just everything outside of ourselves is really beyond our control. We may have some influence, but we can't control it. But we try to. And so again, we fight with life. We give our mind this impossible task, which is to make sure that nothing hits our negative samskaras, and we only want stuff that hits our positive samskaras, and we want that to happen. We want to repeat these experiences we've liked, and we want to avoid the experiences that we, that trigger us. And we tell ourselves that it's the outside stuff that brings the happiness or the unhappiness. When really it's inside us, right? So Mickey has this statement. I'm going to share the screen again. I just want you to be able to see it. So everything will be okay as soon as you are okay with everything. And that's the only time everything will be okay. So this is in chapter 10. And, you know, I want to know what folks think of this phrase. So,
sounds like a beautiful place to be. There you go. That's what I think of.
Does it sound attainable? Does it sound like, you know, why is he saying this?
I feel that, is it attainable? Dare I say, and maybe I'm naive, dare I say that there are moments maybe you're filled with joy, that everything else just is amazing, and but it's fleeting and it's not sustainable. So no, you can never stay in that. I feel like it's something to aspire towards, but it's definitely, I get sometimes lost in the first part of the sentence. So, so that's just the reality.
Yeah. Anyone else? And I'm not sure if I can see the chat from here. Oh, there we go. I think this is Bev saying she totally agrees. When she mentioned to someone else, they thought she was giving up critical thinking. Yeah. I think a lot of people think that about this. It's just like living in la la land. But, so I'm going to stop sharing for a sec so I can see folks.
I think this quote is so interesting because for some reason that last line, that is the only time when everything is going to be okay. For some reason that last line really helps me connect with, it really is a moment to moment experience. I really do have to practice every moment for that moment to be okay. And therefore, if I string all these moments together, then life will be okay. If only I can sustain this practice every moment. Yeah, but I guess Mickey did it. Why can't I? Why not?
Yeah, even Mickey, I don't think maintains this, you know, is okay with everything all the time. And, you know, and okay with everything doesn't mean, you know, that you're not trying to change, you know, injustice or whatever. I think what he's really saying is it's this attitude of, let's see what life is going to give me today, right? It's this attitude of, I am going to actively work on things being okay. Okay in the sense that I can handle it, right? I can handle it. I can allow it in without resisting it. I can accept that this is what's going on. I can experience the pain. I can experience the intensity. I can experience, you know, whatever it is that life throws at me. I can, you know, I can experience it and then go from there, right? And it's this idea of, so I mean, it is the North Star, in my view. It's the North Star, right? But it's really good to have a North Star that we can go towards, you know. And you can say this many different ways, but it's basically this idea of, you know, my practice is to be okay with whatever is put in front of me, to accept it, open to it, not to resist it, to experience it fully, because I only have so many moments in this life. I want to experience them all. I don't want to, I don't want to be caged. I don't want to be defending myself. I want to be able to handle everything.
But Lori, my concern is this could lead to a form of inaction. If we look at, say, the pressing issue of the environment right now, it's not okay. And isn't that a concern that if we think, okay, everything's okay, you know, the famine in Africa, the locusts, the polar ice melting, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you balance out everything's okay, but still be active in participating in things that need to be addressed? So I kind of fear it's going to lead to a sense of just inactiveness and passiveness and not taking perhaps responsibility for the things that are not okay.
Yeah.
So I'll stop my tirade.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, this is Gary, what you're saying is like, I mean, this is the biggest concern people have with this idea of you know, allowing everything to be okay. But that's not, this is really only meant over a certain range, in the sense that it's the idea that it's okay in sense of me being able to handle it, not that it's okay in an absolute sense, right?
Yes.
It's the idea that if there's injustice going on, if there's environmental degradation going on, I can be a lot more effective at dealing with it if I can not resist the experience, if I can not, you know, create these samskaras, if I can come from a place of positive energy rather than a place of negative energy, right? So that's really all he's saying. He's not, when he says be okay with it, he means be okay with it in the sense of not push it away, not resist it inside. He's not saying anything about what to do outside. Saying don't let it be an inner problem, like an emotional, like, you know, feel it, like, you know, let it in, don't stop it, and then go from there. So that's what he's saying. He's not in any way, shape, or form saying that you should, you know, you know, not, you know, take action in the outside world. Yeah. Yeah. So, and the key thing that he's getting at is there's a big difference between fixing the outside problems because the outside is really a problem, and fixing the outside problems to deal with our inner problem, right? This is a really important distinction. And I'm glad you brought it up, Gary, because it's a really important distinction, right? So the idea is we do need to fix the outer problems when you know, when we look at it from a place of balance, and, you know, and when we're in a solid place and we're in our highest aspiration, we're not being driven by fear or whatever else it is. But when we're, you know, in a place of kindness, compassion, you know, feeling whole and complete, and we look at something and we go, this is a problem, we need to fix it. Great. But it's the idea that, you know, when I feel lonely, I don't just go and marry the first person I date in order to not feel lonely. Or, you know, I feel this fear, so I'm not going to go out to, you know, I'm not going to go to this party, even though I really like this person. I'm not going to go to the party because I have this social anxiety, you know. I mean, I don't want to, like, it's just saying we think that we naturally think that the solution to our outer problems, I mean, there's example after example in the book, right? But constantly trying to fix our inner problems by, you know, the outside world, right? So, you know, like, I think that the way that I'm going to feel better is to, you know, buy a car and buy a cottage. And if I actually did that, I mean, you know, I might feel better for a while, and then, you know, but that's not really the root of my problem, right? The root of my problem is the samskaras. So, oh, it's 5 minutes too. So, okay. So, you know, I think that phrase, what it's getting to is, you know, he also talks about, imagine how fun life would be if you didn't have to worry about how things will unfold, right? And that's really kind of where that everything will be okay as soon as you're okay with everything line is meant to point you. You know, in terms of the chapter 10 really has really good stuff about how to let go, you know, to talk about, you know, this and it's really just, he's going through the relax, release, lean back part, starting with the small stuff. One of the things he talks about is bells of mindfulness. He doesn't use that phrase, that's a Thich Nhat Hanh phrase, but he talks about practice being in the seat of awareness several times a day. And the way to do that is to, you know, decide on certain things that happen, you know, several times a day. Like every time you get in your car, or every time you get in the elevator, you know, every time you're walking to the bathroom, or whatever it might be, every time, you know, when I wake up in the morning, when I go to bed at night, but there's these regular occurrences in your life, and you say to yourself, okay, when this happens, I am going to, you know, relax, release, go into my seat of awareness. I'm going to check in with my body, check in with my mind, my emotions, and I'm just going to, you know, practice this seat of awareness stuff. Okay, so, and that's part of the homework actually, or the home practice this week. So, I mean, the home practice this week, basically, there's the meditation this week is around thoughts, so mental talk and mental images. And then continue working with the small stuff. So just continue that. You can pick new small stuff, or you can stay with the ones you've got. You know, do try and make them as small as possible. And just remind yourself that it's a good thing when a samskara comes up. Think of the thorn. Think of the picture of the thorn. You want that out, right? It's good that it came up, because now you can get the thing off your arm. And the bells of mindfulness, and that's about it. And then the reading. So I'll share that with you, and the journaling, if that's helpful. And I'll post the extended summary that goes to the end of chapter 10. And by the way, these summaries, I'm posting them I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm posting them in Word so that you can work with them. You can make notes to them and do whatever you want with them. And the part in red is the practice, like how to practice. So you can kind of, because he gives a little bit in each chapter kind of on how to practice. So you can go and you can just quickly scan the red in terms of how to practice. Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't have more time today to talk about that part. Sort of ran out of time, but I think we covered a lot in terms of how to practice in our other stuff. One thing I wanted to just mention, and this is in the, so he talks about being neurotic, and I thought, what exactly is neurotic? And so I'm just going to put it in the chat, because I went and looked it up. And it says, behaving strangely or anxiously, or poor ability to adapt to one's environment. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Poor ability to adapt to one's environment, because that's what this is all about. You know, being okay with something, or handling it, or letting it in. It's this idea that, you know, I'm adapting to my environment. I'm not trying to you know, pretend it's not there or push it away. It's like, yes, this is what's in front of me. This is what the moment in front of me is. Let me experience it. Let me accept it, and then I can adapt to it properly. And they also say neuroses are said to be rooted in our ego defense mechanisms. And it's like, yeah, that's our samskaras, right? Like in the dictionary, it says neuroses are caused by our samskaras. Right? I thought, oh, defending our ego causes neuroses. That's right in there, isn't it? So that's it for this week. We're pretty much at 9 o'clock. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to stay on. And thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Laurie, and great to see everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Lori.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Great class.
Great class.
Mm.
Lori, I had a question.
Yeah.
Something that's just seems just a little bit contradictory for me. If you could clear it up, would be great. Like the book says, and your stuff says that what the mind says is garbage. So to me, that's like, okay, garbage, get rid of it, let it go. But then there's also the element of, but then you have to, but also inviting the experience in. So I'm a little confused, but am I letting go because it's garbage, or am I keeping it?
Right. What Mickey's saying is that, you know, I think it's quite instrumental when he says it's garbage. When your mind starts talking and when a samskara gets hit, right? Like when my mind started talking and saying, oh, I need to be in nature. How am I going to make this happen? Right? So then the consciousness gets pulled into it. It's like a magnet. I want to fix this problem, right? And what he's saying is, it's not a real problem. It's your samskara talking. It's your sense of lack talking. It's garbage. If I think of it as garbage, I'm going to be less likely to get pulled into it and be tricked into you know, into thinking that I have to fix it, right? So, you know, what he's saying is that all this, you know, the voice in your head, the personal mind, that to not listen to it, you know, which doesn't mean to stop it from talking. He's very clear in saying you can't stop it from talking, but you want to stay in your seat of awareness and not get pulled into the content and not get pulled into thinking you have to fix it, right? You want to stay in the seat of awareness, and so you want to be disinterested in the content. You know, the more interested you are in the content, the more it's going to pull you out of your seat of consciousness, and you're going to be right in it. And like, now I have to figure out how I can get nature. This is the most important thing ever, right? Because that's what it feels like. That's what it felt like. It felt like this is the most important thing ever. I need to figure out how I can get myself into nature. And really, it wasn't important at all. I mean, I love nature. I do love nature, but you know, I've been happy outside of nature many times in my life. I don't actually, you know, and there's actually a tree right in my backyard, you know, like that I look at from my deck. I mean, I don't actually need to go to a cottage, right? So by thinking of it as garbage, it helps to be disinterested in it. And it helps me to see that it's coming from my samskara. It's coming from my fear or my loneliness or my whatever, my sense of lack. So that's not the direction I want to go in. I don't want my life to be about satisfying my lower self. I want it to be about my higher self, right? That's what I want driving my life, the higher self, not the lower self. So all this samskaric stuff, it's all my lower self. So if I view it as garbage, I'm going to be less likely to get hooked into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, good night.
Yeah. Have a great week, Janet.
Thanks, you too. Bye, Brian.
Bye-bye, Janet. Lori, thanks for the opportunity to just ask a question here.
Yeah, no problem.
My internet went down when you were introducing the 3 layers of the mind.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
Oh.
I've got, sorry, go ahead.
I'll post it, but go ahead, because I'm happy to go over it with you.
Oh, okay. Well, the posting would be great. I have senses, ego, and then analytical. Is that a good summation?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's the sensory experience itself, which includes like thoughts and emotions.
Right, right.
Right.
Which I wrote down from the beginning of today.
Yeah. And then, yeah, the personal mind, the stored impressions, the samskaras, the ego. Yeah. And then the analytical mind, which is intentional thinking.
Okay.
I find the easiest way to distinguish between the personal mind and the analytical mind is the intentionality of it. And we can get tricked into thinking that it's intentional. Like when when I was thinking about how can I get into nature, how can, it feels like it's intentional, but it's not, like it,
Yes.
like I'm doing this sitting meditation, this online sitting meditation. Clearly my intention is not to think about how I can be in nature, and yet it feels intentional. Like it feels like I'm making it happen, but I'm not.
Yeah, the intention word has intensity in it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's so intense it feels intentional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thanks very much for tonight, Lori. It's very good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, Brian. Yeah.
Yeah, it's turning out to be just what I had hoped the course would be. So thanks.
Yeah, wonderful. That's wonderful to hear. Okay, well, have a wonderful weekend. I guess it's going to get cooler. Yay. I'm not sure.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
I guess however it is fine. But
yes, that's right. No more wishing. All right. Enjoy the weather, whatever it is, Lori.
Yeah, you too, Brian. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.